Hello and welcome to my office. This seminar is about strategy in pharma, medtech and other life sciences businesses. It's based on the 25 years I've spent as an academic studying the industry, and before that the 20 years in the industry as a research chemist, a marketer and a strategist. So if you work in marketing or medical affairs, market access or strategy in a pharma or a medtech company, then this seminar is for you. Please click, subscribe and share it with your other colleagues who might be interested. And if you stick around to the end, I'll tell you how to get copies of the published articles that support this and my other seminars. Today's seminar is the second in a series of 4 that is about the strategy review process that most companies go through every year. Obviously, this is an important process, both for your company, but also for you and your career. It's important that it goes well. In my research, I've found that strategy reviews can be effective and useful, or they can be a complete waste of time and effort. The difference lies not in any slick PowerPoint presentation, but in the questions that are asked and the way those questions are answered during the strategy review. In the best companies, the leaders reviewing the strategic plan ask 4 difficult questions, and the strategists presenting the plan prepare 4 strong answers for those questions. Now, the first of those questions is, what do we know about the market that our competitors don't? And in the first seminar in the series, I covered why that question is important and how to answer it. If you missed that seminar, there's a link here. Please take a look after this seminar is finished. But in this seminar, I'm going to talk about the second question. What's the difference between our strategy and that of our competitors? Now, if you've ever been in a strategy review, you will know that moment when the presentation's done and then the questions start. Now imagine for a moment that you're in there and the most important person in the room thanks the presenters, then looks at you and asks, if I were now to sit through the strategy presentations of our competitors, what would be the difference between their strategies and ours? Now, senior business leaders know that this is a very powerful and very useful question. They know that when firms or brands compete head-on, each doing essentially the same thing as each other but trying to do it more effectively, then the market becomes a war of attrition. Each side's efforts cancel each other out and the market share doesn't change much. Senior leaders know that competitive battles are rarely won by direct, obvious methods. So what they're hoping to hear from the strategists is that you understand one of the most fundamental rules of strategy. Don't compete head on, do something different. In almost all of the companies I've studied, the senior executives are disappointed by the answer they get to that question. The strategists respond only with examples of very limited differentiation, very tactical differentiation, the sort of thing that doesn't make much difference in practice. Often the strategists point to small differences in product features and claims and little semantic differences in the messaging or minor pricing differences that become irrelevant in a real-world situation. What the senior leaders really want to hear, but very rarely do hear, is that your brand's strategy differs from the competitor's strategy and not just at a tactical, detailed level. Now, only a relatively few firms can the strategists go back. Only in relatively few firms can the strategists clearly demonstrate what you would call strategic differentiation. And in this seminar, I'm going to talk about how those exemplary firms are able to do that and what you can learn from them. Now, let's be clear about what strategy is. Strategy is a pair of thoughtful, deliberate choices. First, your choice about who you're going to create value for, and second, how you're going to create value for them. If you look at the strategies of many companies, you'll find that they've made essentially the same choices as their competitors have, with only minor differences. So compare the competitors in a market, and you'll quite often find they're offering essentially the same thing in essentially the same way to essentially the same people as each other. By contrast, strategic differentiation is when your choices about how to create value and for whom are significantly different from those of your competitors. Many strategists get lost in the hands-on detail of implementation and they don't notice this problem with their strategy. So pause the video for a moment if you like, and just to reflect on how differentiated your own strategy really is. You might find it's less differentiated than you would hope for. Now, over the last 25 years, I've compared the strategies of many competing brands in pharma and medtech. And when you clear away the marketing hype and the technical detail, I find that most strategies are not differentiated from their competitors' strategies. In other words, very few plans achieve strategic differentiation. But some do. And of course, that raises the important question. What do those few firms who strategically differentiate do differently from those firms that fail to strategically differentiate? So let's answer that question. If you've had a good marketing strategy education, you will have heard of somebody called Theodore Levitt. He famously said that if you're not thinking segmentation, you're not thinking. Many strategic plans talk about segmentation, but most base their strategy on the segments implied by the market research data, such as prescribing patterns or patient disease stage or healthcare setting or product category. In our industry, where most market data is supplied by a few dominant market research firms, what this means is that the segmentation approach leads to brands using the same data and therefore the same segmentation approach. And if you use the same segmentation approach as their competitors, then it's very difficult to differentiate strategically. Marginally better than this are those brand strategies that use their own market research and data to define segments based on needs and motivators, such as conservative prescribers or comorbid patients. And since this uses proprietary information in segmentation, this is a better basis for strategic differentiation. But it ignores a core reality of almost all pharma and medtech markets. Customers' preference and choice is created not by individuals, but by a combination of many stakeholders, usually including prescribers and other healthcare professionals, patients and payers. So what do the best firms do? Well, those firms that achieve strategic differentiation begin by thinking about contextual or situational segmentation. That is, every usage decision is made in a context defined by the combined needs of all the stakeholders. The best firms segment the market according to these multi-stakeholder decisions. This is much harder to do than the simple approaches I mentioned earlier. But doing it the hard way means that their understanding of market segmentation is almost certain to be different and much better than that of their competitors. Segmenting by context or situation allows for the needs of multiple stakeholders, and it is the foundation of strategic differentiation in pharma and medtech markets. If contextual segmentation is the first step in differentiating a strategy, then the second step is your choice of which segments to focus on, to target. Since strategy is a set of choices, strategic differentiation means making different choices about targeting from those of your competitors. Now, having done situational segmentation, then the results of that present you with choices about how to allocate effort and resources between those different contextual segments. And firms that strategically differentiate make those important choices in a very different way, using a different method from those that don't. The weakest firms don't really make choices at all. They don't really allocate resources differently. They just smear the resources and activity all over the whole market. This, of course, means that they waste effort where it won't be paying off, and consequently they underinvest in those parts of the market where they should have focused. Now, sometimes this weakness is mitigated by intelligent tactical activity, for instance, by the sales team, but this can't fully compensate for an indecisive strategy that, in essence, abdicates its responsibility to choose between contextual segments. Some firms are a little better than this. They allocate effort between segments according to how large those segments are or where the market share is. This makes some sense, but if, as is usually the case, all the competitors are also going after the largest segments, then it doesn't lead to strategic differentiation. So what about those few firms that do achieve full strategic differentiation? Well, they choose between segments in a much more sophisticated way. They understand that these contextual segments don't just vary in how attractive they are, they vary in how easy it is to win them. So they use those two criteria, segment attractiveness and segment winnability, if you like, to choose between which segments to focus on today, which to focus on tomorrow, and importantly, which segments to pull resources away from. This two-factor approach to allocating resources between contextual segments is very different from what most pharma and medtech firms do. But it allows the best strategists to give a strong answer to that question about how is your strategy different from that of your competitors, or at least it takes them halfway to a strong answer. So let me talk about the other half. Defining situational segments and allocating effort according to the attractiveness and winnability of those segments allows the best firms to go halfway to strategic differentiation. But to complete the journey, to fully differentiate the strategy, they must also differentiate how they create value for the segments that they do target. In other words, their value proposition must be different. Now, the least differentiated strategies make essentially the same value proposition to the whole market. Better companies tailor their value proposition to individual market segments. But of course, if they're using the same market research data as everybody else and targeting the same segments as their rivals, then their value propositions will be similar to those rivals and they won't be strategically differentiated. The best firms do it differently. They achieve full strategic differentiation by building their segment-specific value propositions around the needs of each of the situational segments that they target. More than that, they focus on the higher needs of those contextual segments. These are often non-clinical and intangible needs, such as confidence or trust or ease of use. In other words, there are 3 steps to a well-differentiated strategy. First, differentiated segmentation methods give the best firms a set of contextual segments to choose from. Second, a differentiated method of allocating resources, one that considers segment attractiveness and segment winnability, allows those firms to target differently from their rivals, allocate their resources differently. Third, targeting different segments with different resources allows the best firms to create differentiated value propositions. Now, together, these 3 steps result in a strongly differentiated strategy. And that is what senior leaders want to see during the strategy review. I started by saying that it's important that the strategy review is an effective process. That's obviously true. In the best companies, it is effective because their leaders ask their strategists 4 difficult questions and the strategists have 4 good answers to those questions. They begin with, what do we know about our market that our competitors don't, as I covered in the first seminar of this series. And then they ask, what's different about our strategy? As I've described in this seminar, strategists give good answers to the second question by adopting differentiated approaches to how they segment, how they do the targeting, and how they do value proposition design. Why don't all firms do this? Well, strategic differentiation depends on some critical capabilities that not all firms have. Strategists must be able to understand and use contextual segmentation. Many can't. They must understand the multiple factors that determine each segment's attractiveness and winnability. Many can't. And they must be able to construct a value proposition that meets the needs of the target segment. Many can't. These capabilities are not common in life sciences companies. But if you want to be able to give your boss a strong answer to this difficult question, or you're the boss and you want your strategists to give you a good answer to your questions, then you'll need to develop these capabilities. Thanks for joining the seminar. If you found it worth your time, then please like, subscribe and share with your colleagues. If you'd like to read the articles that support the seminar, then mail me and I'll send them to you. If you'd like to browse the 400 articles, papers and books I've written about our industry, then please take a look at my website. And if you'd like to talk about how my research can help you improve your competitive capabilities, then I'd be happy to set up a virtual coffee with you.